presiding or what's your wedding?
Good evening. At this time, I'd like to call the Manchester Community Schools Board of Trustees meeting to order. If you'd all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, roll call. Mr. Raymer.
Present.
Mr. Booker is absent. Mr. Brubaker.
Here.
Mr. Esposito is absent. Mr. Shaw.
Present.
Mr. Hensley.
I'm here.
I'm Dave Terflinger. I'm here. Superintendent Whelan.
Here.
Business Manager Tanya Emo.
Here.
Attorney Mr. Mark France.
Here.
Okay, with that, Superintendent Whelan, additions and deletions.
Okay, so we have several of each tonight. Item 7.12, we want to add the approval of the cross-country overnight field trip. 7.1, we'd like to add Carrie Ross as the MIS kitchen manager. 7.13, approval of one-year administrative contracts. So some of our administrators are on just one-year contracts, so we're going to approve status quo for them to continue with this coming school year. Also adding Melody Holmes' resignation as an MES custodian, and also the approval of the demolition contract language for the property next door. We also have two deletions, which is 7.10, which is the deletion of the approval of an EL director. We're still in the process of that hire. And then also 7.7, deletion of the new radio communication system quote. So those are all the changes for tonight's agenda.
Thank you, Superintendent Whelan. At this time, we hear from any patrons on agenda items only. Okay, no public comments. We have no presentations, no recognition. Tanya Emo, financial report.
We can go ahead to okay. So the education fund, this is our revenues for education fund. Our state grant was $819,000. We've received now 48% of our estimated revenue for this year. And that's right on par. We're at 50% of the year. And our count did go down, so that we will not hit that 10.2 million unless our count goes up this fall. So, which that's what we're hoping, but at the present time, from what our projected revenue was, we're down just a little bit, a few students, not a ton, but enough to drop that down just a little. So we have received 51% of the revenue estimated for the first 6 months. And then on expenses, we have also expended 51%, so we're right on par. Usually you have a few more expenses at the end of the year, and then we'll have a catch-up here in late June and July when we're not paying all the paraprofessionals and support staff that would normally be coming out of education fund. Teachers get paid year-round, but the other support staff, those pays are not considered during June, so that catches us back up to where we should be at the end of the July. So we have next slide on the year to date. So we have received $5.2 million on our revenue, and we expended $5.1 million. So we are tracking just a little bit ahead. That's good. We like to catch just a little bit up. We're leaving our fund balance of $1.3 million for the end of the 6 months. Then to the operations fund, we did receive our property tax fund, or property tax distribution, so we are now positive. I know that was a little bit of a concern, but unfortunately, since the state only distributes twice a year, or this county only distributes twice a year, it is normal to run that to the negative during that 6 months coming up to that. We've received 39%, which is normal. More of those distributions come in. Some people forgot to pay their taxes. They'll be getting notices, that type of thing. So that you don't always receive 50% at that first distribution. But we did receive $1.3 million. So then for our expenses, we had $33,000 in expenses this month. We are receiving, less in our utilities bills right now, as we're trying to keep the temperature set points up to not have the buildings too cool, but yet allow for the waxes to dry as we're sealing floors and such. So we do need to continue running those. We aren't completely shut down on those. So we are seeing a little bit of a decrease in our utility costs. But we have spent 54%, and a portion of that's going to be, right now the diesel cost throughout the year has already been tracking higher, as everybody knows. So that has increased our operations expenditures. We can go to the next slide. Operations fund. We have a total balance right now of $260,000 with our revenue and expenditures 1.7 and 1.8. And we had, I went ahead and put the debt service expenditures. I didn't put the revenue slide in today, this month. It is in your, the detail is in the board packet, but I just didn't add in that during that month. It was just, we had a larger than normal financial report, so I left that slide of the detail out here. But we had our expenditures took place in June. So I did put the expenditure detail here of $930,000 for our debt payments for the 6 months. And then the next slide, I just did the year-to-date summary. So you had the summary, but you have the detail in your packets. We had revenue received of $991,000, and then our expenditures were $960,000, leaving our year-to-date balance of $30,000 in our debt service. And then we'll have debt service payments again in December, yes. I also included this month rainy day. We normally don't have any expenditures, but last month you had approved, and the DLGF approved an appropriation to expend $77,000 for the purchase of the property, which shows the expenditure here. And then the next slide, it shows the total fund balance after that purchase of that property. And currently it is just the purchase of the property, not the demolition costs. We have a total fund balance remaining of $277,000. School nutrition, we received $97,000 in revenue, and we have not received the May. Well, we have now, but when I did the report for June, we had not received the May distribution of our reimbursement yet. The state is about a month behind, which is a little unusual on theirs, but that we've received that revenue here the 1st of July. So didn't have as much in expenses. We only had $39,000 in expenses then for the school nutrition account. You can move ahead to the next one. There we go. Yep. There are not as many meals that are served. It is fewer sites that were opened. So $39,000 was the only expenses for the month of June. So then we have a total fund balance of $184,000 in the school nutrition account. And then curriculum materials, I did not also include the detail this month on the slides, but we have started to purchase the new adoptions. So some of the expenses have been going out here in the month of June, leaving us negative again, which is normal as we purchase a large adoption that will be used over 6 years, and they'll pay for it starting. Students will start paying here in some will pay here during registration and some won't start paying till the school year starts. But it's typical to go to the negative once we start purchasing those adoptions. Any questions?
So I went through my packet, I got a couple
Okay.
of questions.
All right.
The textbook fund
Mm-hmm.
is 101,000 in the red,
Uh-huh.
and how much of that will recoup when school starts?
Typically, we don't get it positive until we get our textbook rental reimbursement from the state in February. Typically, we run that into the red because, at least the year that we've adopted a larger adoption, typically because you expend so much that first payment. But the state they don't want us to run accounts red, but they understand that one we're getting our reimbursement in another at the end in February. So I would expect us to recoup about a third of this as school starts.
You know, does the state make up the other 2/3 then, or does that come out of operating or education?
It actually comes out of debt service.
Really?
Yes. The state pays approximately 70% of our free and reduced. We receive that back as an assistance in February for our reimbursement, and the additional, the difference is taken out of debt service. The DLGF has a form that we get.
Thank you. Any other board questions?
Sure. Favorite question. So kind of next meeting, before we start talking about spending ESSER funds, I want to review that list in a meeting. So like next board meeting, do that. Tanya, financially from the school situation, special session legislation, right? Going to start up, like major concerns, feeding kids. How are we, Kyle and Tanya? I mean,
So we're better off than what we were about 2 weeks ago. So there was a lot of waivers put in place at the federal level that allowed the USDA to extend some special services, especially during the COVID time. One of them was that every student got to eat free lunch. That was done away with, but other ones like the increased reimbursement rate. So our students who are on free and reduced, we do get a certain amount per meal that we feed, both breakfast and lunch. And when the waiver expired, it went to that pre-COVID level of reimbursement, which was about $1 less. And we all know that we're spending more at the grocery store than what we were back in 2019. And when those waivers expired, it went back to that cost. So we were going to be getting considerably less. And so I was really concerned about that. But about a week ago, the federal government did go ahead and approve that waiver to return. So they did say that they'll continue with the reimbursement rate. They aren't going to continue that every student eats for free, so we are going to need to encourage our parents. Some of them had not continued to fill out the free and reduced because everybody was free to begin with, but we need to make sure that they understand that they have to fill out that paperwork in order to be able to be eligible for free and reduced lunch this coming school year. So our account's going to look better than what I thought it was going
Right.
to be.
Becky just shared with me today that she's received almost 100 applications already since July 1. So that's a good number
so they're getting on it.
But we need to encourage people that think they may need assistance to apply.
Then if I ask you, if I ask you guys to come up with a list of 3 top things you would like to see change from a financial perspective with schools, because I mean that's a pretty broad topic, right? Like, could you work on that? Because we'll start having subcommittee meetings and then go up to the major committee for the regional group. And I know, Kyle, I know you, the superintendents, work the annual stuff, but if we could just focus on a couple, 2 or 3 things, right, and drive them through each session, then I think we, hopefully kind of close this
Mr. Shaw, did you have a question?
Yeah, on that curriculum account, did you say, so when we purchase those materials, it's for multiple years, is that right?
Right. The adoption is for 6 years. So we purchased the materials for math this year that will be used throughout the corporation for the next 6 years. So and it used to be that you purchased a book and everybody, we've all had the book that had everybody's name in it that used it the last 4 years before you. And then also many of the consumables were sent to us gratis through when we purchased the books. We purchased some books, but we also have site licenses with that. So now you have the book online because we are one-to-one, and the kids have the devices. So we purchased the books in 1 year, or purchased the curriculum this year, and then we don't spread the payments out, but we receive the payments from families over the 6 years. So,
Okay, so like for math, that, like, we won't pay anything for the next 5 years, or very
Correct.
little,
right.
for that?
Right.
And then I guess so we covered math, but are we doing everything all in the same year, or do we?
No, just I don't recall. It used to be the state was very stringent about which year was each adoption. They've relaxed that guideline. I can't, off the top of my head, I'm not sure what the next year is. Do you know, John?
So, next year I couldn't speak on the science,
Okay.
but we've had three big years.
Right.
Can I stop? Yep, because there's people watching at home. Thank you, John.
Yeah, no problem. So, it's interesting that, because a lot of times we see finances each year, and I've not seen the breakdowns like that before. In fact, that's kind of the first time I'd seen one like that. It's kind of good to see. But I'm telling you right now, this last 3 adoptions have been heavy hitters. So you had social studies, you had English, and you had math, all 3 big ones. Our science will probably be digital. I don't know that we've got science coming up. It just seemed like we just did that a couple years ago. But you've had 3 big ones, heavy hitters. And those math books this year were very expensive. And again, we just do classroom sets. We do a lot of digital. That's a little cheaper way to go, but man, it's still been pricey. So what you're seeing, and we got TBR coming, I think, later, is that math, and it's just, but we didn't get a book for every kid. We've got classroom sets and then digital licenses. So.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Dr. Lippy? Thank you. Tanya, I do have one more question because I was looking and maybe I wasn't looking in the right spot. Didn't we approve moving from education fund to operations fund X amount of dollars?
Yes.
I want to say like 69,000 or something. Is that per month?
It's
That's per month. 41.
41,000 per month.
Okay, so where
Okay,
does that show
can you
up
pull
at?
up my education fund revenues, or expenses, I'm sorry. Okay. So we'll go to the next slide, because that's revenues. So that comes out of the education fund. It is, I'm trying to look at it at an angle. Transfers, the $750,000 line there, that transfers. Now, we're transferring, we transferred $60,000 this last month, but that was, we had a couple of grants that had ended cycle. Our high ability, we were overspent, a couple of them, by $200, $300. So their $60,000 was the total we transferred in the month of June, but we transferred $41,000 to education fund, or to operations from the education fund. That's our monthly transfer. And so the 268, but this month, because we had some closing of grants that had, they're great. Grants are a great thing. They supplement our programs, but every once in a while a book comes in a little bit more than we had thought, and we're spending $200 or $300 more. So we had closed out several grants that had some negative balances at the end of the fiscal year, so that we spent $60,000 in transfers. 41 of that came to our operations fund. The other went to the grants to clean those up.
And just to clarify, the state, the DLGF says there's a percent
The state,
that we're allowed to
the
transfer.
DOE actually says there's a percent. They say no more than 15% or you are on the naughty list.
Okay, so where are we?
We are at like 9%. That was what was done in the budget last year. There is a strong possibility that we may have to request an increase in that, but that was what was approved with the DLGF. So without an additional appropriation hearing, we cannot increase that amount till we do another additional appropriation and have the DLGF approve that. With the costs of our
We've been a lot higher.
utilities, we have been, yes.
That was
yeah.
the shocked look on
Right.
my face. is
Yeah,
we've
we have been
higher.
a lot higher. I'm gonna kind of hedge it and wait just a little bit and see where numbers come in. I can, it takes about a month when we ask for an additional appropriation to get all the ads and then do it. But at present, we're gonna try and stay where we are and see if we can manage.
Thank you very much.
Mhm.
Any other questions?
Yeah, well, this is nitpicking a little bit. Could you put titles on all these columns? You've got it,
Sure.
I think, on the,
I have them,
revenue,
and
but
then
not the
when
expense. Yeah.
Sorry.
thank you. There they are.
Yeah, they're on the first one. They didn't carry through, so I'll do that.
Anybody else?
Sorry.
No, thanks for the information.
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, consent items, board, you have the claims in your packet, the minutes. I can't do this with paper and I just can't do it. Hang on a second here. Okay. You have the claims in your packet and your minutes. Any questions on the consent items? Tanya, did you want to explain that fee that I questioned
Sure.
briefly, please?
Sure. Let me get to that, sorry. There is a fee for $669 and some odd cents for, it says credit card fees in the claims. That is, oops, sorry, $669 and some odd cents off the top of my head. It's still pulling up, so, but that is the processing fees that were charged by the credit card company for taking credit cards in the building. And as I told Dave, we will actually be putting some of that, we're gonna do a study, figure out a percentage and put some of that back into school nutrition as well. Because with the largest number of our credit card receipts are for school nutrition. So that costs, instead of just incurring it in our operations fund, we'll pass that into that fund. Probably have to look at spreading that to extracurriculars as well, if athletics is using it and that type of thing as well.
Thank you.
Is that a per month?
Yes, and it's a percentage, so pre-COVID, free meals for everybody, the fees were higher because it's a percentage of the sales. So they were, upwards of more than $1,000 pre-COVID when people were always putting lunch money in. Now there's very few. I mean, if you want an extra lunch, if you want an a la carte item, people are putting money in. So at this point, those fees were less, but the percentage stays the same. I am going to be doing an RFP for banking services, and we'll look at credit card processing fees as part of that RFP.
Any other questions? Okay, we don't have no donations, no facility rentals. Mr. Whelan, obsolete equipment?
Yeah, you can go ahead and do that.
These are two items that are in the kitchen. French fryer machine that, sorry. French fryer and an ice machine that are beyond repair anymore. Becky does not even want the French fry machine. If it were to work, the ice machine, we've spent more in repairs than it would cost to replace it. She also does not use the ice machine, other than if they'd have a banquet catering. And at this point, she's happy to buy a bag of ice for the catering events. and not have to pay upkeep on a machine. So both of these machines are non-functional, and she would like to have them removed just to have the space.
Okay, didn't we talk about obsolete equipment at a previous meeting about sending that to policy? To come up with
Yep,
some
we got a
more.
policy coming up, 18th or 19th, I think.
Okay. All right, at this time I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda items. Mr. Hensley, Mr. Brubaker second. Any further discussion or questions? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign. Motion carries. Recommendations for approval, 7.1, Superintendent Whelan.
Okay, so we do have quite a few, and that happens during the summertime. So Sonia Poe as a bus driver, David Huff as the spring musical assistant, Heather Lauer as the MIS media and tech assistant, Michaela Monroe as the MIS special education teacher, Angela Walker as the junior senior high school reading instructional aide, Pat Sainsbury as the MIS part-time cook, June Airgood as the MIS part-time cook, Rachel Broadbeck as the junior senior high school school counselor, Derek Sorg as the junior senior high school STEM teacher, and Carrie Ross as the MIS kitchen manager.
Entertain a motion to approve 7.1, employment. Mr. Brubaker, Mr. Raymer seconded. Any discussion or questions?
I'd just like to welcome all these people and also thank, there's a lot of hiring done over the summer, which requires a lot of interview committees getting together out of contracted time. So I appreciate everybody's support in that process.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Resignations, Superintendent Whelan.
Mark Rickard as junior senior high school guidance counselor, Nikki Crum as a bus driver, Karen Jimenez as the dual language paraprofessional, and Melody Holmes as a MES custodian.
Entertain a motion to accept the resignation, 7.2. Mr. Raymer. Mr. Brubaker, comments, discussion?
I'd just really like to thank all four of them for their service to Manchester Community Schools and wish them nothing but the best.
So would I. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Superintendent Whelan, 7.3, approval of women's soccer team overnight trip.
Okay, so during the summer, there are some special events that happen with our extracurriculars, and one of the annual ones is a overnight women's soccer trip, so they're looking at August 4th to the 5th, and because it's an overnight trip, it requires board approval for that. So this is something they've done for multiple years, and I know is a good team building experience.
Motion to approve 7.3, the approval of Manchester Junior Senior High School women's soccer team for an overnight field trip.
All motion.
Mr. Hensley,
Second.
Mr. Raymer, comments, questions? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Approved, 5-0. Textbook rental fees, Superintendent Whelan.
Okay, so those should be available to you as well as the public. And so these are the breakdowns. And once again, when it comes to the textbook piece, a lot of those are spread over, the initial purchase is spread over 6 years, and so it's just a percentage. It's like a rental for those books that the student, that is passed along to the student. And then the technology fee covers it. There's a technology fee at each grade level that covers the one-to-one devices and some of the other things that are required for that. So basically, textbook rental fees are something that needs to be updated every single year because there are different expenses that we look at and need to be board approved for grades K to 12 going into this. So.
Entertain a motion to approve the textbook fees. Second?
Second.
Was that Mr. Brubaker or Mr. Amer?
It was.
Thank you. I do have a question. In one of these, it shows the $35 fee for the Chromebook shell. And then in one of the other ones for the building, it says for new students only. And I'd just like to clarify that these kids aren't getting charged every year $35 for a new case and not receiving it, because I keep hearing that that's what happens, but can somebody clarify that?
It is only on the kindergarten one that everybody, because they're all new, would get one. Then other years, they do not get charged for that unless it's been broken. So it's reused, it's reissued to them, but if it's been
Right.
broken, it would need to be.
So essentially, when they get a Chromebook, they're keeping that Chromebook until the board replaces them?
Correct. Correct.
You know, I
That's
mean,
correct.
What are we doing, on a 5-year cycle? So if they get one in kindergarten, they might have the same one till 5th grade?
Yeah, whatever that cycle is, they try to keep. And then if someone comes in new, they're either getting a new one or one from the student transferring out. So, but yes, that is correct.
Any other questions, discussion, board? I thought we had it. I thought, did Boyd, didn't you
Yeah.
guys approve this? Or make the motion? Yeah, I did. Any other questions, comments? Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Approved, 5-0. Adult and student lunch prices, Superintendent Wheelan.
Okay, so once again, because for the last 2 years, everybody's been receiving free meals, well, at least the students have been, we really haven't updated any pricing. So, you know, Becky looked over the cost of what our meals are, and we did require a slight increase across the board, especially since the student meals had not been increased for the last 2 years. And so you'll see ranging from anywhere from 5 to 15 cents. And there is a variation in the cost of breakfast and lunch based on grade level, because there is requirements as far as quantities of each food that are served to each age group. So there is, as they progress in age, the cost of their meals progress as well. So
Entertain a motion to approve the adult and student lunch prices as presented.
Brian did.
So moved.
Brian, Mr. Hensley seconded. Any further comment or question? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. 5-0. Approval of surety bonds for Darla Kane and ECA treasurers from July 1, 2022 to June 30th, 2023. Is this you?
That's Tanya.
Okay.
It's just standard operating procedure. They expire every June, and it's just the annual surety bonds for, this covers principals, secretaries in the buildings, athletic director, and then named bonds for Fatima and Darla. And mine was left off, different, yeah. Anyway, working with the insurance, we'll have ones for Shelley and myself here and another, probably at the next board meeting, so.
I didn't have a chance to look at this in my packet. What's the amount that they're covered to? And has that been reviewed lately?
It has been, off the top of my head, I believe the building level, it's like 20,000. To do blanket bonds, it's 20, and I believe that this standard is 50 to 100,000 for the other.
Okay. Entertain motion to approve 7.6, approval of the bonds for Darla and the ECA treasurers. Mr. Raymer, Mr. Brubaker, seconded. Further discussion or questions? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carries 5-0. 7.7 was pulled from the agenda. 7.8.
Can I ask a question about that?
Sure.
Was there more than one quote?
Yes, we had 3 quotes.
But we only saw one in the original board packet.
That was the one we were recommending.
Okay.
So,
7.8, Andrea Espacette, MIS paraprofessional, Superintendent Wheelan.
So this is just another approval, but because it's one of our school board members' wives, we separated that agenda item out, so it would have been that same thing, so.
Motion to approve 7.8, Mr. Hensley. Mr. Shaw, seconded. Questions, comments?
Welcome aboard.
Yeah, welcome to the team. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign. 5-0. 7.9, Manchester Junior Senior High School revised handbook changes. The board, that was in your packet. These were the amendments that we talked about last month. Superintendent?
If you have questions, Dr. Lippy's here to answer those.
Motion to approve the agenda, 7.9, the revised handbook changes. Mr. Raymer? I need a second. Mr. Shaw? Discussion, questions?
Yeah, who's the judge?
It's not McAllen, it's,
So we're actually going to send them to court?
they have all, like, this day reporting has been going on for probably 15 years. And at that initial trip to day reporting, they go into the courtroom and the judge talks to them about the procedures for day reporting. So that isn't a new process. It's been going on for a long time. It started out as a grant awarded to the county, and so that was something they had worked on.
Do we do this for smoking as well?
Yes.
It could be any school suspension. I mean, as long as it's a way to keep kids connected, doing work instead of just out running around town. That's what
I understand that, but this specifically states vaping, so I'm
Yeah.
asking.
Yeah.
Yes, and that's, we didn't really have a spelled out vaping policy. That's something we have added, and it's become, we actually have more of a problem, or it's become more prevalent than what smoking or chewing tobacco has been at the schools as of late. And so that was something we addressed specifically as a county on what we can do to help curb that. So.
Any other questions?
No, I'd just say, I just kind of want to, I'm getting the vibe, Brian. I mean, I want to be kind of careful about what we step in when we try to, we're educators, and when we try to legislate behavior and morality, that's, I think, where we step into problems. And I understand the urgency on the vaping thing as well, because it's our next, whatever, what they're gonna call it, health disaster or whatever, but, yeah, we're here to educate kids, and we're here to give an opportune environment, but there does need to be discipline, but I guess if this is the way it is, it kind of, as much stuff that goes through the courts, is there a vehicle we're missing to deal with these kids better than the court system?
Well, and
I
that's,
mean, a mentorship program
we're,
or?
we're
you know?
trying to keep them out of the courts, to be honest with you. Like, this is not a formal, like,
Yeah.
their name is not included in like court documentation or anything like that. And it's really, it used to be that first trip to day reporting was, you're seeing the judge right away. And now we've delayed that. You know, we're hoping that, you know, it's that progressive discipline where hopefully they make better choices after that first time. But if not, then, you know, they're talking to the judge, and it's not punitive in nature from the judge, but we're trying to get people involved to try to help them make
And I
better
mean, I've had a
choices.
couple of mine have to stay down there in jail for a day for some of the things they did, right? So, I mean, I'm not against discipline, but I want us to be real careful stepping into this space, because
Yeah.
it's hard for the congressmen and the senators to legislate, you know, a lot of stuff, so you know.
Thank you, Mr. Hensley. Anybody else? I do have one comment that I would like to make. I don't want to be nitpicking, but these amendments would have been a lot easier if somebody would have taken and I get that, you know, your staff is all on summer break, but if we'd have had the policy with the changes highlighted
Yeah.
versus the list of changes and having
Sure.
to go back and forth going forward. And one of the other
Okay.
board members, I don't remember who, had mentioned in the last meeting when we approved these, that going forward, if we could get one that represents Manchester Community Schools for each building, and then have the separate chapters that pertain to your building,
Yeah.
Tommy's
What the-
building.
Kind of the commonalities in one section and the fork in the road
Yeah,
in another area.
yeah. I mean, that would be really helpful going
And
Well,
forward.
we've got board docs, we got a lot of formatting, we got a lot of stuff. From that, you know, on these things, when they're revised, they're, you know, you can make it where you're looking at revision history as well, and that's really what I like to focus on. I mean, that's a lot of stuff to pour through these documents, and it's a little easier on me when we have something that shows revision history or what, you know, what you're looking at there, so.
And that's what Mr. Raymer had brought up, the more consistency throughout, which I couldn't agree with more. And so we've actually been working on that, on what format is best to use. And there's plenty out. I mean, you're just seeing a PDF version of it, but there's plenty of word processing software pieces that you can show, like you're saying, the revision history, and also kind of what it was versus what we're wanting it to be, instead of, you know, trying to compare two documents here and here and make those, see what those revisions are. So I think we've made some good progress. Obviously, that won't be, you know, we may go ahead and update the formatting, not the substance of it, just update the formatting so we do have that consistency. And then hopefully by next June or May, when we're rolling these next one out, that you'll be able to see that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Call the vote to accept the revised handbook changes, 7.9. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Okay, we have 4-1. Okay, EL director was pulled, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Approval of transportation consultant contract, 7.11.
Okay, so as you guys all know, we did have Imogene Knight, who retired at the end of this year after a lot of service as a bus driver and then as our transportation director. You know, there's always things that unforeseen circumstances going into the school year, getting things started up, and then also just making sure it's running. And so, you know, Mr. Self is absorbing a lot of those responsibilities as the transportation director. However, Ms. Knight had agreed to stay on as a consultant, and I really, after talking with Mr. Self and Ms. Knight, you know, we're really thinking 10 hours or less per week. You know, it's somewhat unpredictable because we've never been in this position before. You know, we don't know if there's going to be major complications at the beginning of the school year, so there might be a spike there, or, you know, if Mr. Self is out for an extended period of time, it's one of those positions that having somebody in the know in there is very helpful. So This is basically a transportation consultant contract, which Ms. Knight would be working at an hourly rate for us. And I really do estimate that it's probably 10 hours or less per week. And then, at the end of the semester, we'll reevaluate that to see if we need to continue with that. And at any time in the contract, it says that, we can terminate the contract or she can terminate the contract if we feel like it's not working.
We need
A motion to approve the consulting agreement.
I'll motion.
Mr. Hensley? Mr. Brubaker? Comments?
So with that said, like, why isn't there an hourly limit of like a sum limit or per week limit or per month limit or per year limit?
Did we put that in?
Am I missing it?
I'm sorry.
No, it's not in there.
Okay. And it really was because it's somewhat unpredictable on what that would be. I didn't want to limit us. I do believe that it's 10 hours a week or less. However, I don't want to be in a pinch. Let's say that we, Mr. Self is gone for a while, and then what are we doing in that case? Like, we don't have someone else trained to be able to do that job. And when you're talking about transporting, 1,000 kids a day, it's one of those areas that I don't want to mess up. So, she does bring a wealth of experience. I think that having some flexibility and knowing when we need her and when we don't provides that for us.
So I would suggest that we, I get your point that you don't want to be tied down to 10 hours a week in case, Mr. Self is sick or whatever. I would suggest either 40 hours per month, because that way you can both adjust, or maybe put a total of 250 hours in the contract. I mean, I know we can both end it, but it also runs all the way up till January 2023, so a half a year would give you that. So if she needed to work 40 hours a week, because the other thing is here, if she's collecting Social Security, and I don't want to put her personal business out there, but there's a cap on how much she can work.
I know.
So I would personally like to see some kind of a number in there, whether it's 10 hours a week, 40 hours a month, or 240 hours for the length of the contract. And if that doesn't work, you can always bring it back to the board for an adjustment.
Well, and my only concern is when it's not working is when we need it the most. And if we're having, if I have to wait 2 weeks or whatever to get that approval, that's my only thought. So, I mean, that's
why it's 240 hours for a 6-month contract. You're going to know well in advance that, if Randy's sick, you need to come to us right away and say, hey, she's going to have to come back.
And that's up to you guys. If you feel like you need to put that contract limit in there, then we can add that in there. So,
refresh my memory. Who made the motion?
I made the motion.
Do you want to modify it? Put a number in there?
Well, I'm just looking at it practically. There's a dollar amount that limits, but I've never had a contract that just says dollar amounts. It doesn't have like usually it's some dollar amount from your financial liability that you put in there, like a mass dollar amount you'd want to spend per year. So like one of my contracts with Purdue's like limited to 90,000. We go over that, they've got to go back and basically, those limits are set. I don't think in policy we don't do this very often, so we really haven't addressed it in policy of doing this. Mark, you put this together?
Yes.
How many contracts do you do that don't have a kind of ending to it or some type of financial amount limit?
For the consulting contracts?
Yeah.
That have decent amount.
Okay.
So if you want to add an hour limit, I would say go for the whole length of the contract. That way, if we know we're getting close to the end and we're only 6 months in, then we have plenty of hours left and Kyle can bring it back to the board. So I would go on the per year basis rather than a per week or per month.
I'm good with that. Are you good with that, Kyle?
yeah,
I'll change my motion to accept it with that modification.
240.
You say
For the-
240?
For the whole
Yeah.
year?
For-
Well, is that how well
It expires at the end of this semester, so it's basically giving 240 hours up to that time.
How many hours you want, I guess? What's a good number?
Well, I can always come back if we're getting to that,
Okay.
so. Yep.
240? No turn.
If that's good with you. Or three
I have no problem coming back and asking for more. If, I mean,
Okay.
it's one of those that we don't know until we start the school year and until we know what void she's gonna fill, we don't know what that is. I mean, I think we all know what her worth is, so I wanna make sure that that's not the question here. I mean, she brings a wealth of experience
Oh,
and is
no,
gonna
that's
be a
not-
huge help. But I understand that if you feel like we need to cap that, I would say the semester.
I'd go a little bit higher on that. I mean, that's $4,000. I mean, we spend $4,000 like nothing here.
$4,080, right?
Yeah.
It's 5,000.
Yeah, do it. We could, mines are all in dollar amounts, so
Up to 5,000, are you guys comfortable with that? Yeah.
I'm
Brian,
good with
you
it.
good? Okay. Yep.
So I'm just figuring
Model.
out what the 5,000 is in hours. But yeah, I'm good with that.
It's gonna be a little more than 240.
Okay, so we gotta clarify this motion then. Mr. Hensley is making the motion to approve the contract with a cap of $5,000, figured at
Yep, 17.
$17 an hour. And you seconded, and you're good with it?
He seconded.
Oh, you seconded it, okay. You got all that, Missy? Huh? Okay, let me restate it, Mr. Okay. Okay, any further discussion? Question? Okay, all in favor signify by, well, it's contract. Mr. Raymer,
Yes.
Mr. Brubaker,
Yes.
Mr. Shaw,
Yes.
Mr. Hensley,
Yes.
and I vote yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
And most of all, thank Imogene, because
For
I'd
the
be
record,
Yeah,
so
no
much-
kidding.
Yeah.
That's 294 hours.
Okay.
Where are we at here? Approval of overnight, 7.12, approval of cross-country overnight field trip August 2nd and 3rd.
So once again, this is one of those that is kind of an annual event. The cross-country teams go to the Indiana Dunes. They practice while they're up there. They do some team building. And we did not have this recommendation by when I posted the agenda, and that's why it was added to it. So, think once again, it has been approved in the past, and because it's an overnight field trip, it does need to be approved each year.
Do I have a motion to approve 7.12 as presented?
I'll
Mr.
move.
Hensley? Mr. Shaw, was that your hand?
Sure.
And Mr. Shaw seconded. Any further comments or questions? I just saw a flash out of the corner of my eye with this screen, so. Okay.
And I just say prayers for all these people that travel, our kids, and especially the dunes and stuff. Those are good trips for them, right?
Yep.
For their safety and that, so.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Trips approved 5-0. Approval of one-year administrative contract, 7.13, Superintendent Whelan.
So once again, we have, some of our administrators are on 2-year contracts, some of them are on 1 year. So we need to renew those 1-year contracts to extend to include this coming school year. We have not changed the salaries for those individuals because those are determined after the completion of our negotiations of our teacher contracts. So in November, if there are raises, then I'll be coming back and we'll be talking about those administrative contracts again. So this is just same of everything from last year, it's just extending them through this year.
Motion to approve the 7.13, approval of one-year administrative contracts. Mr. Brubaker, Mr. Raymer, comments, discussion?
These aren't actual, I'm just curious why they're called administrators when they're not administrators.
Because they're not teachers, basically.
So
They're
why-
not teachers, parapros, they're heads of departments and things like that. So it's just a general classification of them. So, yeah, they don't have their education administrative licenses, but they're directors and sorts, so that's why they're considered that.
And
I got a question. Who in the world is Mary Ann Rager hire? Oh, that's in there. I've never heard her name.
I think you intentionally did that.
M.A.,
No, I know.
his phone number's on the website.
She loves me too.
I do have a question on these because we end up having to do this every year. My question is for Mr. France. When the 2-year contracts come up again next year, could we one time take them from 24 months to say 30 months so that they expire in November when all the other stuff, so we don't have to go back and figure out what raises are and do these status quo? Is there a state statute that prevents us from doing that? And you can get back to us. I just, you know,
I would terminate them in November, mid-year. I would usually keep them in end of June.
Right.
okay, but then that's what I'm saying. It ends up in June, but then the MTA can't negotiate until November, so make them January.
Well, the teacher contracts start in August, so I mean.
Only the state.
It's
I mean,
education.
So it doesn't make sense to do even more dates. That's.
Well, I'm just trying to get everything lined up.
It's never gonna be lined up.
Yeah.
I would tell you probably don't try.
Okay, I tried. All right.
Over that, throw myself
Yeah.
out.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the table. Any further comments or questions? Okay, this is contracts. Mr. Raymer,
Yes.
Mr. Brubaker,
Yes.
Mr. Shaw,
Yes.
Mr. Hensley,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Moving on, that was 5-0, Missy. Approval of demolition contract language. This was an addition. The board got a copy of this. We'll probably need to post that tomorrow and put it on the website. But all we're really doing is approving the demo, and it's in, if you're on your computer, it's in there, is the contract language. We're not approving the contractor or the amount because they haven't signed yet. We're just approving the contract language. Is that correct?
That is correct. So it's the scope of work and the terms of the work.
And the price could be from here to there on the 3 quote. We have 3 quotes. We're trying with the lowest one, but if he has an objection, then we'll have to do something different.
And in this, the allocation for the money has already been approved. You guys already did that, so it's just the language itself.
Do I have a motion to approve the contract language? Mr. Raymer? Mr. Brubaker? Any comments, questions?
Yeah, so when we did the approval for the demolition, didn't we base that upon the average of the 3 quotes?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, so,
We padded, they were really close together and we padded it a little bit just to make sure that we had
Okay.
the clearance, so.
say, don't come back asking for more.
Just ask you to.
It's coming out of your. Now, so we're supposed to approve this, even though we just got this, the language tonight. Is that what you're asking us, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, and we were waiting for the contractor to approve it and send it back to us, and that didn't happen. So we want to try and get the building down. It's under 50,000, so Kyle can sign it. We just need the board to approve the contract language. That way we can move ahead with the demolition as soon as the contractor is ready. Correct?
correct.
And these are local guys?
Yeah, all 3 were local,
Good.
all Wabash County. Any other questions, comments? Okay, I'll start. I'm gonna vote yes. Mr. Hensley?
Yes.
Mr. Shaw?
Yes.
Mr. Brubaker?
Yes.
Mr. Raymer?
Yes.
Okay, 5-0. Contract language is approved, Mr. Whelan.
And I will notify you guys as soon as I get that all set up, so we have more details.
Okay, Heartland update. I sent all the board members an email today with a memo of understanding with Ivy Tech that Heartland Board has been asked to approve, and I'm not comfortable doing it without our board's blessing, so to speak. So, I didn't post it or bring it. I sent it all to you. Take a look at it, let me know what you think, and I'll get your questions answered. And that's gonna happen a week from tomorrow, so.
Would you mind just briefly?
Basically, it's, $70,000 worth of welders that were delivered in January, and now they're asking for exclusive use of the Heartland facility with no reimbursement for utilities, or, like I said, it's in your packet. It's kinda like you made a donation, but then in the paperwork, it says you own the donation. So there's just a lot of red flags with it, and I wasn't comfortable, so I sent it to you guys to get your opinion on it.
And Heartland Board was not aware that?
We just got, no, we were not.
Okay.
No, we were made aware of the donation in January, and then this memo of understanding showed up, and
Okay.
I'm not comfortable making that decision by myself, so. That's all I got with the Heartland update. Mr. Hensley?
So I already mentioned the regional subcommittees and then the major committee that basically, I mean, that's a lot of power to recommend legislation, you know, and hopefully this year, what I'd love to see is go down to Indianapolis and have a good time with the legislators, right? We're all working on things instead of the normal conflict that we seem to have, you know, year in and year out. But that, you know, so there's some opportunities. I'm working with the group putting a CTE center together for St. Joe County. It's one of the largest counties in the state. They're looking at, you know, there's a lot of talk about using Ready Grant as part of the financing for that facility. I know, you know, Dave, going back to Heartland, I know, you know, the opportunity with the EDA money, you know, that's kind of falling apart down at Heartland, and so we're gonna have to invest. And I think what I want to say tonight is there potential that we could go after some of the ready money in our region for the repairs at Heartland versus that cash outlay? I'd like somebody to kind of dig into that and check in, see, you know, if other areas are doing it, then otherwise we're gonna, you know, that's a pretty good little chunk of change. And you know, we've got the position, a financial position, by tightening our belt, being frugal, and really challenging about every spend. And I know you got, you know, at points you guys don't like that, but I mean, that's how we got where we are. If you look at the other, you know, the other school corporations aren't in a good a position right now, you know, financially. So you know, any way we can look at other funds to bring in to do that now that that's canceled, I think that's something to look at for those repairs, or even, you know, and I'm not sure why we couldn't look at a little bit of expansion down there. So you know, you can talk with Mark, or I'll try to get a hold of him. I've been kind of busy, but maybe tomorrow or Thursday or something. But Kyle, you're really the person to maybe push that or look at that.
And that's, you know, I appreciate hearing about any grant opportunities like this, because, you know, when we're trying, I mean, we've been at capacity at Heartland Career Center for quite some time. And it's complicated because, you know, when you start talking about a building project, you have 5 corporations who are feeding into that. They're all different sizes and have all different financial means and have all different building projects of their own. And so when I think everybody agrees that we need to expand. Nobody really knows how to determine where that money's coming from. So if we can look, you know, if there are grant opportunities out there, I think that would be a huge help. You know, originally the ready money was, from my understanding, was more for those shovel-ready projects. But, you know, I know that this conversation's been going on a long time, and I still haven't heard anything about, has anyone received any of those grants yet, or is it still being talked about?
August 15th is, you know, when they'll submit, it's gonna have to go through a board review, and it's competitive.
Yep.
But I mean, you know, we had that money earmarked for the center, if it went through right, using some ready money. So I don't know that all that money needs to go over to, you know, the workforce training center. If we have needs at Heartland, I'm not too sure why we wouldn't try to tap into that. So.
I can address that. There was an agreement signed with the Community Foundation, and there was a letter sent out recently to all of the donors, and the county seeking a new partner to try and build the Adult Education Center. And for the time being, that money will reside with the Community Foundation for that project. And
What money?
the
What are you talking about? Donor money?
yeah, the million.
No, I'm not worried about donor
Yeah,
money. I'm
I'm
talking
not-
about the Ready grant.
Okay, well, Heartland's name was on the iReady grant, and the Heartland Board has directed Grow Wabash County to remove our name from that, because we're not a partner in that adult training center anymore. So there's that money, and then, like I said, there was work done with Garmin Miller that could be brought up pretty quick. Soil borings are already done if we decide to do a project. But to Kyle's point, the maintenance, the HVAC and the roof, every member school is on the hook for a percentage of that for being a member, and trying to get, we got three of the 5 school districts are up against their debt service limits. They're donating over $1 million out of their education fund every year, so trying to get them to come on board with that's gonna be a bit of a challenge.
Listen,
but-
the Ready Funds tax money, that's my
Right.
money coming out of my pocket going in there, and it's a competitive bid. And so if we need improvements in
Yeah.
Parkland, that somebody needs to get on it, write up a proposal, and submit it to Ready Grants, all I'm saying.
So would that be Mark, or would that be Mark and the
I'd
superintendent
say it'd
in
be
your
Mark and
view?
the superintendents that would look at that, so that's why I'm bringing it up tonight. I did, and unfortunately, I should have thought about this 2 months ago.
Yeah.
It just hit me today, so that's all I have.
Lunch charging and refund policy, first reading. Mr. Whelan?
Yeah, so this is, something that most corporations have in place, and so, if a student does not have money in their account, and once again, for the last 2 years, we haven't had to worry about this because everybody's getting free lunch, and so now, we do allow them to charge if they don't have money in their account and need it up to a certain amount, and then there's procedures in there for contacting parents and things like that. At the end of the school year, we do give them time to bring their account up to good, or there are additional steps we take to collect those funds. And then for students who are graduating out, those remaining balances in the lunch accounts are able to be transferred to siblings who are still with our corporation, or the parent can request a reimbursement on that amount. So that's basically what that refund and charging policy is. So kids aren't going hungry. If they run out of money in their account, we're still trying to take care of them, but it's explaining what we'll do to make sure that we get that money returned at some point.
And I did appreciate in there the part about the cashier discreetly reminding them, we don't want to be singling anybody out, like in the old days, hand them a peanut butter sandwich and everybody in the cafeteria knows you didn't have lunch money. Yeah, so. Motion that's first reading. That'll be next month, sorry. Lost my place. Any other comments on that? Superintendent comments?
Okay, so our online registration has opened up, so our parents can go on there and register their students. We had some good celebrations. First of all, our community hosted their fireworks back a couple Saturdays ago, and that event went really well. So I think it's neat that they're able to, use our facilities for that. Some celebrations. Our FFA chapter was recognized this year as a top 10 in the state designation, which we all know they're doing a great job, but I believe this is the first time they've reached that top 10 level. Nate Birch, our head SRO, was named regional SRO of the year, which is awesome. We did get the Secure Safety Grant application completed, and we should be hearing back not too long about that. And then I also want, school, it is summertime, and, a lot of people have some downtime, but there's 2 groups, especially custodians and food service, who are still putting in a lot of time and effort. So the buildings are looking great. I know that it's a time for them to catch up on some things they haven't been able to do. But also, there was a lot of, when the waivers weren't renewed and they were worried about reimbursement for summer feeding programs, there was a lot of corporations who opted not to do it. So I do want to thank the food service workers, especially because we have our programming, summer school at the high school and the elementary. So them being able to continue to feed those students was awesome. So I want to thank them, and then obviously the central office staff who have to put up with me all summer long too. Their dedication is unmatched. So I just want to appreciate all their work. Thanks, Missy.
That's it?
That's all.
Board comments?
Got about a month left, right? So everybody stay safe. I will say, looking at the food service and stuff, I was coming down Beckley Street one day, and it's the First Brethren Church. The food, what do they call that?
Food harvest?
The harvest.
Something
Community
harvest.
Food Bank.
Second Harvest Food Bank.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I was totally amazed at the number of people there for food and stuff. So, with prices the way they are and things like that, that's a concern, and I'm glad the legislators did step up on the, on the lunch deal, so.
In a month before I got too sick to my stomach about the whole thing, so they got taken care of.
We have a Garmin meeting tomorrow on the project. There'll be no July 2nd board meeting. The August board meeting has been moved to the third Tuesday.
Yeah, 15th, I believe it is, 15th or 16th.
Yeah, it's after school.
16th?
It's the Tuesday after school starts. So things get pretty crazy around here the first week of school, so we've started moving the board meeting to the week after school starts, so Kyle can give us an update on how that went. Any other, F&F committee members, please get with Kyle. We need to schedule a meeting. So other than that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn unless somebody else got something.
I'll motion.
Mr. Hensley, Mr. Raymer, all in favor?